They say you never truly know who you're sleeping next to until the mask slips. For Grant Caldwell, a rising tech mogul in Seattle, the mask didn't just slip, it shattered. He thought his wife, Charlotte, was a penniless nobody he could toss aside for his glamorous mistress. He thought he could raise his hand against her while she carried his unborn child and get away with it. He was wrong. Dead wrong. Grant didn't know that the quiet woman he abused was the hidden heiress to the Kensington global empire. And when the Kensingtons come for you, they don't just sue you, they erase you. This is the story of how one man's cruelty cost him everything. The rain in Seattle was relentless, hammering against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse suite at the pinnacle of the Caldwell Tower. Inside, the atmosphere was just as stormy, though the thunder was silent, rolling off the tense shoulders of Charlotte Caldwell. She sat on the edge of the velvet sofa, her hands resting protectively over her swollen belly. She was 7 months pregnant, her ankles swollen, her back aching, but it was the ache in her chest that made it hard to breathe. Across the room, Grant Caldwell was adjusting his cufflinks in the mirror. He looked every inch the man of the year that Forbes had just declared him. Tall, sharp-jawed, with eyes that used to look at her with warmth, but now only held irritation. "I'm going to be late, Charlotte," Grant said, not bothering to turn around. "Don't wait up." "It's 9 p.m., Grant," Charlotte said, her voice soft but steady. "It's our anniversary. You promised we would have dinner. The chef prepared the roast you like." Grant scoffed, grabbing his suit jacket. "Plans change. Something came up at the office. Big merger talks. You wouldn't understand the complexities of it." Charlotte looked down at her hands. She understood more than he knew. She understood that merger talks was code for Monica Reed, the new VP of marketing he had hired 3 months ago. She understood that the perfume clinging to his shirts lately wasn't hers. It was Chanel No. 5, Monica's signature scent. "Is Monica going to be at these merger talks?" Charlotte asked. Grant froze. He turned slowly, his face darkening. "Excuse me?" "I'm not stupid, Grant. I see the texts. I see the late nights. I smell her on you." Grant crossed the room in 3 long strides, looming over her. The charm that the cameras loved evaporated, replaced by a sneer. "You should be careful, Charlotte. You're lucky to be in this penthouse. You're lucky I picked you out of that diner you were waitressing in. Without me, you're nothing. Just a broke orphan with nowhere to go." Charlotte didn't flinch, though her heart raced. "I am your wife. I am the mother of your son." "You're a placeholder," Grant spat, leaning down so his face was inches from hers. "And you're becoming a burden. Don't push me, Charlotte. Now I'm leaving. And when I come back, I expect this sour mood of yours to be gone." He slammed the door so hard the crystal chandelier rattled. Charlotte sat in the silence for a long time. Grant thought he knew her story. He believed the lie she had told him 3 years ago when they met. He thought she was Charlotte Brown, a struggling waitress with no family, no connections, and no money. He loved the narrative of being her savior. It fed his massive ego. But Charlotte wasn't Charlotte Brown. She stood up slowly, wincing at a kick from the baby, and walked to the window. She pulled a burner phone from a hidden compartment in her jewelry box. It was a simple black device, contrasting with the luxury around her. She dialed a number she hadn't called in 3 years. It rang once. "Miss Kensington?" A deep, gravelly voice answered immediately. It was barely a whisper, but the authority was unmistakable. "Hello, Alfred," Charlotte said, her voice trembling slightly. "Is my father in London or New York?" "Mr. Kensington is currently in Zurich, madam. But for you, he is wherever you need him to be." Has the situation changed? He's seeing someone else, Alfred. And tonight I saw something in his eyes. He hates me. I think I'm in danger. Shall I initiate the extraction protocol? No, Charlotte said, her eyes hardening as she looked at her reflection in the glass. Not yet. I need him to show his true colors to the world. I need undeniable proof. If I leave now, he'll spin the story. He'll say I'm crazy, that I'm unfit. He'll try to take the baby. I can't let that happen. Very well, Alfred replied. We have eyes on him, as always. The Kensington Group has just acquired a controlling interest in the supplier for Mr. Caldwell's new microchip project. We have been waiting for your command to squeeze. Don't squeeze yet, Charlotte whispered. Let him feel invincible for a little longer. The fall hurts more from the top. She hung up and hid the phone. Grant Caldwell thought he was the king of Seattle. He had no idea he was married to the only daughter of William Kensington, a man whose net worth made Grant's fortune look like pocket change. William Kensington was a titan of industry, a man who moved economies with a phone call. He had opposed this marriage from the start, suspicious of Grant's ambition. Charlotte, blinded by love, had insisted on proving her father wrong. She had hidden her identity to ensure Grant loved her for her. Not her billions. It was the biggest mistake of her life. 2 hours later, Grant was not at the office. He was at the Sapphire Lounge, a high-end club downtown, seated in a private booth with Monica Reed. Monica was everything Charlotte wasn't right now, slender, loud, and draped in diamonds that Grant had bought with joint account funds. She ran a manicured hand up Grant's arm. "When are you going to leave the cow, Grant?" Monica purred, sipping her martini. "She's getting huge. It's gross. You deserve someone who matches your status." Grant laughed, swirling his scotch. "Patience, babe. The prenup is tricky. If I divorce her now, the public backlash would be bad. Billionaire dumps pregnant wife. It's bad PR. I need her to mess up. I need her to look unstable. Then I get full custody. I look like the grieving father, and you and I take over the world." "I don't want to wait," Monica pouted. "I want to move in. That penthouse has a great view. I've already picked out new curtains." "Soon," Grant promised, kissing her neck. "I'll make her life so miserable she'll beg to leave. I'll make her snap." Little did Grant know, the man sitting 2 booths away, reading a newspaper and looking utterly boring in a grey suit, was actually the head of security for the Kensington family. A tiny microphone on the table centerpiece was recording every word. The storm was gathering, but Grant was too busy looking at Monica's neckline to notice the hurricane warning flags. The next morning, the tension in the penthouse had shifted from cold to volatile. Grant had come home at 3 a.m., smelling of alcohol and perfume. Charlotte was awake, sitting at the kitchen island, drinking tea. "You're awake," he grunted, grabbing a bottle of water from the fridge. "We need to talk, Grant." "I'm tired. I worked all night." "You were at the Sapphire Lounge," Charlotte said calmly, sliding a printed photo across the marble counter. It was a grainy shot, taken by a paparazzi, hired by Alfred, showing Grant kissing Monica in the booth. Grant stared at the photo. His face went pale, then red. The veins in his neck bulged. He didn't apologize. He didn't scramble for an excuse. He exploded. "You having me followed?" he roared, sweeping her mug of tea off the counter. It shattered against the wall, hot liquid splashing near her bare feet. "I didn't have to," Charlotte lied smoothly. "It's all over the tabloids online. You're careless, Grant." "You shut your mouth," he advanced on her. "You think you can embarrass me? You think a little photo scares me? I am Grant Caldwell. I own this city. You own nothing if your investors find out you're abusing your pregnant wife, Charlotte said, standing her ground, though her hands trembled over her stomach. Grant laughed, a cruel, cold sound. Abuse? Who's going to believe you? The poor orphan waitress against the tech visionary? I own the police commissioner. I own the judges. If you try to leave, I will destroy you. I will take that brat in your belly, and you will never see it again. He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her flesh, leaving marks that would bruise within the hour. You are going to stay here, he hissed, and you are going to smile for the charity gala next week, and you are going to accept that Monica is part of my life. If you defy me, Charlotte, you won't like what happens. He shoved her backward. Charlotte stumbled, her hip colliding with the counter edge. A sharp pain shot through her, but she didn't cry out. She watched him storm off to the shower, whistling as if nothing had happened. She looked down at the red marks on her arm. The charade was over. He had put his hands on her. Charlotte went back to the bedroom, but not to cry. She went to the walk-in closet and pulled out a specific red dress. It was a Kensington original, one she had kept hidden. Alfred, she whispered into the burner phone a moment later. It's time. Initiate phase 1, and tell my father to fuel up the jet. I want the board of directors meeting moved to Seattle. With pleasure, Miss Kensington, Alfred replied. Shall we freeze his assets now? No, Charlotte said, her voice turning to ice. Wait until the gala. I want him to lose everything while the whole world is watching. The days leading up to the annual Seattle Tech Charity Gala were a blur of calculated cruelty. Grant didn't just want Charlotte to attend. He wanted her to feel small. He wanted her to be a prop, the dutiful, silent wife standing in the shadow of his brilliance. But Grant was distracted. Strange things were happening at Caldwell Industries. On Tuesday morning, Grant stormed into his home office, slamming a tablet onto the mahogany desk. How does a shipping container just vanish? He screamed into his phone. That container holds the prototypes for the Q-Core processor. Find it, or you're fired. He hung up, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. He didn't notice Charlotte standing in the doorway, holding a basket of laundry. She watched him with a detached, almost clinical observation. She knew exactly where the container was. It was currently sitting in a secure Kensington warehouse in Rotterdam, held up by a customs paperwork error that her father's lawyers had orchestrated. Trouble at work? Charlotte asked, her voice devoid of sympathy. Grant spun around, his eyes narrowing. Get out! I don't need you hovering. And why are you doing laundry? We have maids. You fired the head housekeeper yesterday because she looked at Monica the wrong way, Charlotte reminded him. She was disrespectful, Grant snapped. Speaking of Monica, she's coming over for dinner tonight. We need to go over the seating chart for the gala. Charlotte felt a cold knot in her stomach. You're bringing her here? To our home? Grant, I'm your wife. This is too much. Grant walked over to her, his presence suffocating. This is my home, Charlotte. You just live here. Monica has a better head for business strategy than you do. I need her input. If you don't like it, you can eat in your room like a child. That evening, the humiliation reached new heights. Monica arrived wearing a dress that cost more than Charlotte's entire wardrobe from her waitress days. She breezed past Charlotte in the foyer without a word, handing Charlotte her coat as if she were the help. Hang that up, sweetie, Monica said with a smirk, linking her arm through Grant's. Grant, darling, I was thinking we should move the CEO of Apex Corp to our table. He's useful. Charlotte stood in the hallway, holding the coat of the woman sleeping with her husband. She could have thrown it on the floor. She could have screamed. But the camera hidden in the smoke detector above her was recording. Every insult, every degradation was ammunition. She hung up the coat and walked into the dining room. Grant and Monica were already seated, a bottle of vintage wine open between them. Charlotte sat at the far end of the table. "So," Monica said, picking at her salad. "I heard you're having trouble finding a dress for the gala, Charlotte. It must be hard with that shape." She gestured vaguely at Charlotte's pregnancy bump. "I'll manage," Charlotte said quietly. "I actually ordered something for you," Monica said, signaling to Grant. Grant reached under the table and tossed a plastic bag toward Charlotte. It slid across the polished wood and stopped in front of her. Charlotte opened it. Inside was a tent-like, beige maternity dress. It was shapeless, frumpy, and made of cheap polyester. It looked like something a prison matron would wear. "It covers everything up," Monica giggled. "Grant doesn't want you looking messy next to his investors." Grant didn't even look up from his steak. "Wear it, Charlotte. I don't want you drawing attention to yourself. The night is about me." Charlotte touched the rough fabric. The old Charlotte would have cried. The new Charlotte, the Kensington heiress, felt a fire ignite in her blood. "Thank you," Charlotte said, a small, dangerous smile playing on her lips. "It's perfect." Later that night, while Grant and Monica were working in the study with the door locked, Charlotte went to the guest bedroom she had been relegated to. She pulled out the burner phone. "Alfred," she said. "Go ahead, Miss Kensington." "Grant wants me to look invisible at the gala. He wants me to wear a rag." "Shall I have the Paris team fly in the Emerald Collection?" "No," Charlotte said. "Bring the Midnight Queen gown, the one my mother designed before she passed. And Alfred, make sure the diamonds are real. I want to shine so bright it burns his eyes." "Understood." Also an update. Mr. Caldwell's bank has just flagged his personal accounts for a random audit. His credit cards might experience some friction tomorrow. "Good," Charlotte whispered. "He beat me. He humiliated me. Now, we starve him." The next day, Grant's mood was volcanic. His credit card was declined when he tried to buy Monica a diamond bracelet at lunch. He screamed at the bank manager for an hour, but they cited a system migration error. He came home in a rage. He found Charlotte in the nursery, folding baby clothes. "You!" he shouted, storming in. "Did you touch my accounts? Did you spend money?" "I haven't spent a dime, Grant. You took my cards away months ago, remember?" He grabbed her by the shoulders and shook her. "Don't lie to me. Everything is falling apart. The shipping containers, the bank, the investors pulling out. Someone is sabotaging me." "Maybe it's karma," Charlotte said, looking him dead in the eye. Grant's hand flew up. He slapped her, hard. The sound cracked through the quiet nursery. Charlotte fell back onto the rocking chair, her cheek stinging, tears springing to her eyes despite her resolve. "Don't you ever talk to me about karma," he hissed, leaning over her. "You are nothing. You exist because I allow it. If you step out of line at the gala tomorrow, I will have you committed to a psych ward. I've already signed the papers. All I need is a doctor's signature, and I have plenty on my payroll." He stormed out, leaving Charlotte clutching her cheek. She waited until his footsteps faded. Then she looked at the hidden nanny cam tucked inside a teddy bear on the shelf. The red light blinked once. "That's the final nail, Grant," she whispered. "You just signed your own death warrant." The Seattle Grand Hotel ballroom was transformed into a glittering palace of gold and crystal. The city's elite were there, tech billionaires, politicians, and old money families. The air smelled of expensive perfume and ambition. Grant Caldwell arrived in a custom tuxedo, looking every bit the master of the universe, despite the crumbling foundation of his empire. On his arm was Charlotte. Grant had expected her to wear the beige sack Monica had bought. He hadn't seen her until they were about to leave the penthouse. When she had walked out of her room, Grant had been struck silent. She wasn't wearing the beige dress. Charlotte was wearing a gown of deep, midnight blue velvet that hugged her pregnancy curves with regal elegance. The neckline was tasteful, but stunning, framing a necklace that dripped with diamonds, so large and clear they looked like frozen starlight. It was the Kensington Star of the North necklace, a piece of jewelry worth more than Grant's entire building, though he didn't know that. He just assumed it was high-quality costume jewelry. "I told you to wear the other dress," Grant had hissed in the limo. "It tore," Charlotte had lied effortlessly. "This was an old thing, I found." "It looks flashy," Grant muttered, though he couldn't deny she looked incredible. "Just keep your mouth shut. Stand there and smile. If anyone asks, you're tired." Now in the ballroom, Grant was working the room, his charm turned up to high voltage. But the room felt different tonight. People were whispering. When Grant approached the CEO of a major logistics firm, the man excused himself quickly. "What is wrong with everyone?" Grant muttered to Charlotte, gripping her elbow tightly. "Why are they looking at me like I'm dead?" "Maybe they know something you don't," Charlotte said, sipping sparkling water. "Shut up," he growled. Then Monica appeared. She had ignored Grant's instruction to be discreet. She was wearing a bright red dress, slashed to the thigh, and she made a beeline for them. "Grant!" she squealed, ignoring Charlotte entirely. "The champagne here is terrible. You need to talk to the organizers." She leaned in, whispering something in his ear that made him laugh. The disrespect was open and flagrant. People were staring, a pregnant wife standing next to the mistress in red. "Monica." "Not now," Grant said, though he didn't push her away. "I need to find the keynote speaker. Rumor has it that William Kensington himself is making a surprise appearance. If I can land a partnership with Kensington Global, all our problems vanish. They have unlimited capital." Charlotte stiffened. She knew her father was coming. She just didn't know when. "Kensington," Monica laughed. "Ideally. I heard he's a ruthless old dinosaur. You can charm him, babe." "I intend to." Grant adjusted his tie. "Charlotte, go sit at the table. You look like you're about to tip over." "I'll stay," Charlotte said firmly. "I said go sit down." Grant raised his voice. A few heads turned. He lowered his tone to a venomous whisper. "Do not test me tonight. Go." He shoved her, a small, subtle push, but enough to make her stumble in her heels. She caught herself on a waiter's tray. Glasses crashed to the floor. Silence rippled through the immediate area. Grant looked furious, not concerned. "Look at you," he sneered, loud enough for the circle of people to hear. "Clumsy. I'm sorry, everyone. My wife is fragile." "She's not fragile," a voice boomed from the top of the grand staircase. "She's pregnant, you imbecile." The entire ballroom went silent. The music stopped. At the top of the stairs stood a man who looked like he had been carved out of granite. He had silver hair, broad shoulders, and eyes that were cold enough to freeze hell. He was flanked by 4 security guards who looked like military special ops. Alfred was one of them. It was William Kensington, the Lion of London. Grant's eyes widened. This was his chance. He didn't register the insult. He plastered on his best smile and stepped forward, leaving Charlotte standing amidst the broken glass. "Mr. Kensington," Grant called out, opening his arms. "What an honor. I'm Grant Caldwell. I'm a huge admirer of your—" William Kensington walked down the stairs. He didn't look at Grant. He didn't look at the crowd. His eyes were locked on Charlotte. Grant stepped into William's path, extending his hand. "Mr. Kensington, I'd love to discuss the synergies between Caldwell Industries and your tech division. I think—" William stopped. He looked at Grant's hand, then up at Grant's face with an expression of pure disgust. He didn't shake the hand. "Get out of my way," William rumbled. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried to the back of the room. Grant blinked, confused. "Excuse me?" "Sir, I think there's a misunderstanding. I'm the host of this table. I'm the man of the year. You," William said, pointing a finger at Grant's chest, "are a cockroach in a suit." Gasps erupted around the room. Monica, standing behind Grant, looked terrified. William brushed past Grant as if he were a piece of furniture and walked straight to Charlotte. The terrifying tycoon's face softened instantly. He reached out, his large hands gentle, and took Charlotte's face in his palms. "Hello, Lottie," he said softly. "Hi, Daddy," Charlotte whispered, tears finally spilling over. The sound of the word "Daddy" hit the room like a bomb. Grant froze. The blood drained from his face so fast he looked like a ghost. He turned slowly. "Daddy," he choked out. William Kensington turned back to Grant. The softness was gone. The monster was back. "You didn't know?" William asked, his voice dripping with mock surprise. "You thought you were abusing a nobody? A poor waitress with no connections?" William stepped closer to Grant, towering over him. "You have been beating my daughter," William stated. It wasn't a question. It was a judgment. "You have been starving her. You have been cheating on her with that piece of trash in the red dress." He gestured to Monica without looking at her. I didn't," Grant stammered, his hands shaking. "Mr. Kensington, please let me explain. Charlotte she's unwell. She imagines things." "She imagines bruises?" William asked. He snapped his fingers. Alfred stepped forward. He held a tablet up high, connected to the ballroom's massive projector screen. "No," Grant whispered. On the screen, the footage from the nursery played. Grant screaming, Grant slapping Charlotte. The sound of the slap echoed through the ballroom speakers, amplified 100 times. The crowd gasped in horror. People started pulling out their phones, recording the screen. "That's a deep fake!" Grant screamed, looking around wildly. "It's AI! She faked it!" "And the financial records?" William asked. "My auditors have been going through your company for the last 48 hours, Grant, since we acquired your primary debt holder this morning." Grant's knees buckled. You bought my debt?" "I own your loans. I own your building. I own the patent to your microchip." William leaned in close, his voice a low growl only Grant could hear. "I own you." Monica tried to sneak away into the crowd. "Stop her," William commanded. 2 security guards blocked Monica's path. She shrieked as they grabbed her arms. "This is assault!" Monica yelled. "I don't know anything. I'm just an employee." "We have the emails, Miss Reed," Alfred said calmly. "Conspiracy to commit fraud, embezzlement of company funds, and solicitation of harm against a minor, specifically the unborn child." Grant looked at Charlotte. She wasn't looking at the floor anymore. She was looking at him, her head held high, her hand on her stomach. "You said I was nothing," Charlotte said clearly. "You said I was a placeholder." She took a step toward him. "I am a Kensington, and you just lost the war." William turned to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, the police are waiting outside. Please clear the way for them to collect the trash." As sirens began to wail in the distance, Grant Caldwell realized the rain pounding against the windows wasn't a storm. It was the flood, and he was drowning. The silence that had gripped the ballroom was shattered by the heavy, rhythmic thud of police boots on marble. Grant Caldwell, who an hour ago believed he was the architect of the future, stood frozen. His eyes darted from William Kensington's stony face to Charlotte's tear-streaked but defiant expression, and finally to the officers advancing on him. "Grant Caldwell," a burly officer with a name tag reading Sergeant Kowalski announced, his voice cutting through the tension. "You are under arrest for domestic battery, aggravated assault, fraud, and embezzlement. Turn around and place your hands behind your back." "This is a mistake," Grant shouted, backing away until he bumped into a table, rattling the silverware. "Do you know who I am?" "I know the commissioner. I had dinner with him last week. Get him on the phone." William Kensington stepped forward, blocking Grant's view of the crowd. He leaned in, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "The commissioner is currently answering questions about why he accepted consulting fees from your shell companies, Grant. He isn't going to help you. In fact, he's praying they lock you away forever so you can't talk." Grant's face turned the color of ash. He looked for Monica, his partner in crime, his confident mistress. Monica was already being dragged toward the side exit by two female officers. She wasn't maintaining her composure. She was kicking and screaming, her red dress hiking up, her mascara running down her face in black rivulets. "He made me do it," Monica shrieked, pointing a manicured finger at Grant. "I didn't know he was hitting her. I just did the marketing. He forced me to sign those papers. I'm a victim." "You lying witch!" Grant roared, lunging toward her, but Sergeant Kowalski tackled him. The sight of the man of the year being slammed face first onto the ballroom floor was a spectacle the Seattle elite would never forget. Grant grunted as the cold steel handcuffs bit into his wrists, tighter than necessary. "Charlotte!" Grant yelled from the floor, desperation finally breaking through his arrogance. "Charlotte, tell them! Tell them we're just having a fight! Tell them you fell! Think about the baby! You can't raise a child alone!" Charlotte walked over to where he lay pinned. She looked down at him, not with fear, but with a profound, exhausting pity. She placed a hand on her stomach. "I won't be raising this child alone, Grant," she said softly. "I have a family, a real family, and this baby will know exactly who his father was. I'll make sure he reads the court transcripts when he's old enough. You can't do this to me. I made you." Grant spat, spit flying onto the polished floor. "Take him away," William Kensington commanded, waving his hand as if swatting a fly. As the police hauled Grant to his feet and dragged him out, the paparazzi outside went into a frenzy. Flashbulbs popped like lightning storms. Grant tried to duck his head, but an officer grabbed his hair and pulled his face up. "Chin up, Mr. Caldwell," the officer muttered. "Smile for the front page." The ride to the precinct was a blur of humiliation. Grant sat in the back of the squad car, the hard plastic seat digging into his spine. He was still wearing his tuxedo, but without the tie, which they had removed for suicide prevention. He was processed like a common criminal, fingerprinted, mug-shot, strip-searched. The indignity of it made him vomit in the holding cell toilet. He was placed in a cell with a man who looked like he chewed concrete for breakfast. Grant huddled in the corner, pulling his knees to his chest. "Hey, tuxedo," the cellmate grunted. "Nice suit. You heading to a prom?" Grant didn't answer. He just stared at the graffiti on the wall. "This is temporary," he told himself. "It's a misunderstanding. I have lawyers. I have money. By morning, I'll be out, and I'll sue the Kensingtons for everything they have." He didn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the video of him slapping Charlotte playing on the giant screen. He saw the look in William Kensington's eyes. Morning came with the sound of a metal door slamming. "Caldwell, lawyers here!" a guard shouted. Grant scrambled up, smoothing his wrinkled tuxedo. "Finally, get me out of here." He was led to a small, windowless room with a metal table. Sitting there was not his high-powered corporate attorney, Mr. Blackwood. Instead, it was a young, terrified-looking man in an ill-fitting suit. "Who are you?" Grant demanded. "Where is Blackwood?" "Mr. Blackwood resigned this morning, sir," the young man squeaked. He cited a conflict of interest. Actually, he cited imminent indictment implications. He's trying to avoid being disbarred for the fraud he helped you commit. Grant slammed his fist on the table. "So who are you?" "I'm your court-appointed public defender. My name is Timothy." "A public defender?" Grant laughed hysterically. "I am a billionaire. I don't need a public defender. I can pay for the best." Timothy opened a file folder. "Actually, Mr. Caldwell, you can't. As of 8 a.m. this morning, all your assets have been frozen by the federal government pending the investigation into the embezzlement scheme. Your personal accounts have been seized by the Kensington Group to cover the default on your loans. Even your credit cards have been cancelled." Grant sat down heavily. "Everything?" "Everything," Timothy confirmed. "You don't even have the money to buy a candy bar from the vending machine, let alone bail. And speaking of bail, the district attorney is pushing for remand. They say you're a flight risk." "I have nowhere to go," Grant whispered. "The judge might agree," Timothy said. "But there's worse news. Monica Reed is cutting a deal." Grant's head snapped up. "What?" "She's turning state's witness. She's giving them everything. The offshore accounts, the fake invoices, the dates you physically intimidated witnesses. She claims you threatened to kill her if she didn't comply." "She's lying. She planned half of it." "Maybe," Timothy shrugged. "But she's talking first. And in this game, the first one to talk gets the lifeboat. You're going down with the ship, Mr. Caldwell." 3 days later, Charlotte sat in the sunroom of the Kensington estate on the outskirts of London. Her father had flown her out immediately after the gala on his private jet, attended by a team of obstetricians. The estate was a fortress of tranquility. Green rolling hills stretched for miles, and the only sound was the chirping of birds and the clinking of china as a maid poured tea. Charlotte looked different. The fear that had etched lines into her face for months was gone, replaced by a calm resolve. She rested her hand on her belly. The baby kicked, strong and rhythmic. "The doctor says your blood pressure is finally stabilizing," William said, walking in with a newspaper under his arm. He looked tired but victorious. "I feel better," Charlotte said. "Is it over, Dad?" William sat opposite her. "The criminal part is just beginning. But his life as a businessman? Yes. That is over." He placed the newspaper on the table. The headline of the Global Times screamed, "Fall from Grace. Caldwell Empire crumbles amidst abuse scandal." "Monica Reed gave a televised interview yesterday," William said with a grimace. "She played the victim perfectly. She cried on cue. She detailed how Grant forced her to embezzle funds to pay for his gambling debts, debts we didn't even know he had." "He had gambling debts?" Charlotte asked, surprised. "Millions. Apparently your husband wasn't just cruel, he was incompetent. He was betting on high-risk stocks and losing. He was using the company pension fund to cover his losses. That's why he was so desperate for the merger. He was trying to plug a $50 million hole before anyone noticed." Charlotte shook her head. "I slept next to a stranger." "You slept next to a narcissist," William corrected. "But don't worry. The legal team has ensured he won't be bothering anyone for a long time. However, there is one thing." "What?" "He's requested a visitation. He wants to see you." Charlotte went cold. "No. You don't have to," William said quickly. "I can have the request burned. But His lawyer says Grant claims he has information about your mother's estate, something he found in your personal files when he was ransacking your things." Charlotte paused. Her mother had died when she was 10, leaving behind a legacy of charity and art. Grant had always been obsessed with her mother's jewelry, thinking there were hidden assets. "He's lying," Charlotte said. "He's trying to manipulate me." "Likely," William agreed. "I want to see him," Charlotte said suddenly. William frowned. "Lottie, absolutely not. It's too dangerous for the stress levels." "Not in person," Charlotte said, her eyes hardening. "I want to see him on a screen. I want him to see me sitting here, in your house, safe. I want him to see what he threw away. I need closure, Dad. I need to look him in the eye when he has no power and realize he can't hurt me anymore." William studied his daughter. He saw the steel in her spine, the same steel that had built the Kensington Empire. "Very well," he nodded. "I'll set up a secure video link to the county jail." The video link was established 2 hours later. Charlotte sat in the estate's library, surrounded by leather-bound books and the warmth of a fireplace. On the screen, Grant sat in a stark, grey room. He looked terrible. His head had been shaved, standard procedure for lice control in the overcrowded jail, apparently. He had a black eye, likely from a disagreement with a cellmate. His orange jumpsuit hung loosely on his frame. When the camera flickered on and he saw Charlotte, his eyes lit up with a manic hope. "Charlotte, baby!" His voice cracked through the speakers. "Oh, thank God. Look, you have to help me. This place, they're animals. I haven't slept in 3 days. The food is rotten. You have to tell your father to drop the charges." Charlotte stared at him. She felt nothing. The fear was gone. The love was long dead. All that was left was disgust. "I can't do that, Grant," she said calmly. "The district attorney is pressing charges, not my father. The state of Washington versus Grant Caldwell." "But you can refuse to testify," Grant pleaded, leaning into the camera. "If you don't testify, the abuse charges drop. Then it's just the money stuff. I can beat the money stuff. I can say Monica did it. We can start over, Charlotte. I promise I'll be better. I was stressed. You know how I get when I'm stressed." "How you get?" Charlotte repeated slowly. "You hit me. You kicked me. You told me you wished our son was dead so you wouldn't have to pay child support." "I didn't mean it." "You meant every word. You just didn't think there would be consequences." Grant's face twisted. The begging mask slipped, revealing the monster beneath. "You think you're so high and mighty now, don't you? Sitting in your daddy's castle. You set me up. You hid who you were. That's fraud. I'll sue you for marriage fraud." "Go ahead," Charlotte said, taking a sip of tea. "My lawyers would love the exercise, but that's not why I took this call." "Why?" Grant sneered. "To gloat? No. To tell you that I filed the divorce papers this morning, and to tell you about the name." "What name?" "The baby's name," Charlotte said, rubbing her belly. "I've decided. His name will be William, after the man who actually protects his family." Grant slammed his fist against the table. "That is my son. You can't name him after that old buzzard." "I can," Charlotte said, "because you signed a document 3 months ago. Remember? When you were trying to get that loan from the shadowy offshore investors, you signed a collateral agreement." Grant froze. He remembered. He had been desperate for cash. He had signed a stack of papers without reading them thoroughly. "One of the clauses," Charlotte continued, "was that in the event of a default, which has now happened, you forfeit all parental rights to any offspring in exchange for debt forgiveness. You literally sold your son for a loan, Grant." Grant's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The offshore investor was a Kensington shell company, Charlotte revealed. You sold your rights to my father. You have no claim to this child. Legally, you are a stranger. Grant stared at the camera, the realization crushing him. He had traded his flesh and blood for money he had then lost. You planned this, Grant whispered. You're the devil. I'm a mother, Charlotte said, and a mother does whatever she has to do to keep the wolves away. Goodbye, Grant. She signaled to Alfred, who was standing off camera. Wait, no, Charlotte, don't leave me here, Grant screamed as the screen went black. Charlotte sat in the silence of the library. She took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the scent of old paper and wood smoke. For the first time in years, the air tasted sweet. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the English countryside. The storm was over. But there was still one loose end. Monica Reed. Monica had cut a deal, yes. She thought she was going to walk away with a slap on the wrist. But Charlotte knew something the police didn't. Monica hadn't just embezzled money. She had been selling Caldwell industry secrets to a rival Chinese firm. That was treason. And Charlotte had the emails on a flash drive that she had taken from Grant's safe before she left. Alfred, Charlotte called out. Yes, madam. Send the flash drive to the FBI, the one labeled Project Chimera. Let's see how good Monica's deal is when federal espionage charges are added to the list. Alfred smiled, a rare expression for the stoic man. Consider it done. Monica Reed believed in survival of the fittest. In her mind, Charlotte was weak prey, and Grant was a useful predator until he became wounded. Now that Grant was in a cage, Monica was ready to shed her skin and move on. She sat in the lounge of a private airfield in Seattle, sipping a mimosa. Her plea deal with the district attorney was a masterstroke, or so she thought. She had given them Grant's offshore accounts and testified about the domestic abuse. In exchange, she was granted immunity for the fraud charges and a reduced sentence of probation. She wasn't going to jail. She was going to the Cayman Islands. She checked her phone. Her flight was scheduled to depart in 30 minutes. She had successfully transferred a hidden stash of cryptocurrency, money she had skimmed from Grant without him knowing, into a secure wallet. She was leaving with $2 million and her freedom. Goodbye, Seattle, she whispered to the window, watching the rain streak the glass. And good riddance to the Caldwells. She picked up her Louis Vuitton carry-on and headed for the gate. The private jet she had chartered, using the last of the company credit line before it was frozen, was waiting. As she walked across the tarmac, the wind whipping her hair, she saw 3 black SUVs race onto the runway, cutting off the plane's path. Tires screeched on the wet pavement. Monica stopped. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The press? She thought. No, they don't drive government plates. Doors flew open. Men and women in windbreakers emblazoned with bold yellow letters, FBI. Monica Reed, an agent shouted, leveling a weapon at her. Drop the bag, hands in the air, now! I have a deal, Monica screamed, her voice shrill over the roar of the jet engines. Call the district attorney. I have immunity. The lead agent, a tall woman with eyes like flint, walked up to her, while 2 others kicked Monica's expensive bag away and wrenched her arms behind her back. Your immunity covers state fraud and embezzlement charges, Ms. Reed, the agent said, snapping handcuffs onto Monica's wrists with professional indifference. It does not cover federal espionage and treason. Monica froze. The blood drained from her face, leaving her looking like a wax doll. Espionage? What are you talking about? We received a package this morning containing encrypted emails sent from your personal server to a state-owned entity in Shanghai, the agent recited. You were selling proprietary US microchip technology to a foreign government. That violates the Export Administration Regulations and the Economic Espionage Act." I didn't," Monica stammered. She thought she had deleted those emails. She had wiped the server. How did they have them? Then she remembered. Grant had kept a backup. He was paranoid. He kept a backup of everything in his safe at the penthouse. But Grant was in jail. He couldn't have sent it. Charlotte. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The quiet wife. The doormat. She had been in the penthouse. She had access to the safe. "That bitch!" Monica shrieked, struggling against the agents. "It was Charlotte. She planted it. I'm innocent." "You can tell it to a federal judge," the agent said, shoving Monica towards the SUV. "But considering the blueprints we found in your cloud storage 10 minutes ago, I suggest you save your breath. You're looking at 25 years in federal prison. No parole." Monica was shoved into the back of the vehicle. As they drove away, she looked back at the private jet. It was the closest she would ever get to freedom again. Meanwhile, in the Kensington Estate Library, Charlotte watched the news alert flash across her tablet screen. Breaking, key witness in Caldwell. Case arrested by FBI for espionage. Alfred walked in with a silver tray holding a fresh pot of herbal tea. "It seems the package arrived," Alfred noted dryly. "It seems so," Charlotte said, closing the tablet. "She wanted to destroy my family. It's only fair she spends the rest of her life thinking about family while staring at a concrete wall." "Mr. Caldwell has also been informed of her arrest," Alfred added. "According to my contacts at the jail, he had a panic attack. He realizes that with Monica's testimony now discredited by her treason charge and her inability to help him, he is completely alone. The DA is now seeking the maximum sentence for him as well." "Good," Charlotte said, standing up. She walked to the large bay window. Her reflection showed a woman who had walked through fire and come out forged in steel. They deserve each other, but they will never see each other again. "And the company?" Alfred asked. "The board is asking for a statement." "Dissolve it," Charlotte said firmly. "Liquidate Caldwell Industries. Sell the assets, pay the employees generous severance packages, and donate the remaining proceeds to shelters for victims of domestic violence. I don't want his name on a building. I don't want his legacy to exist. I want it erased." "A scorched earth policy," Alfred nodded approvingly. "Your father will be pleased." 1 year later, the Seattle skyline gleamed under a rare, cloudless summer sky. The city had moved on. The scandal of Grant Caldwell was old news, a cautionary tale told in boardrooms and bars. The Caldwell Tower had been sold, renamed, and repurposed. But for the man sitting in cell block D of the Washington State Penitentiary, time had stopped. Grant Caldwell looked 20 years older. His hair was thinning and grey. His skin was pasty from lack of sun. He sat on the edge of his bunk, staring at the small television mounted in the corner of the common room. It was the only luxury they were allowed. "Hey, Caldwell," a prisoner shouted. "Turn it up. It's the Kensington interview." Grant flinched. He tried to look away, but he couldn't. On the screen, a beautiful woman sat in a garden filled with blooming roses. It was Charlotte. She looked radiant, healthier and happier than he had ever seen her. She was wearing a simple white dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. In her lap sat a chubby, laughing baby boy with bright blue eyes. Grant's eyes, but filled with a joy Grant had never possessed. "So, Ms. Kensington," the interviewer asked, "it's been a year since you launched the New Hope Foundation. You've already opened 10 shelters across the country. What drives you?" "My son, William," Charlotte said, bouncing the baby on her knee. The baby giggled and grabbed her finger. "And the memory of what it feels like to be voiceless. I want to make sure no woman ever feels she has to stay in a dangerous situation because she has no money or support." "And what about the past?" the interviewer pressed gently. "Do you ever think about him?" Grant held his breath. He leaned forward. "Say my name," he thought desperately. "Acknowledge me." Charlotte looked directly into the camera. For a second, Grant felt like she was looking right through the screen, into his soul. "I don't dwell on shadows," Charlotte said, her voice steady. "I focus on the light. The past is a lesson. Nothing more. My life began the day I walked out of that door." She looked down at the baby. "We are moving forward. We are happy." The segment ended. The prisoners around him laughed. "She didn't even say your name, man," one of them jeered. "You're a ghost." Grant put his head in his hands. He realized then that this was his true punishment. Not the cell, not the bad food, not the violence. It was the irrelevance. He had wanted to be a god. Now, he was a footnote in someone else's success story. He had lost his wife, his son, his fortune, and his name. He curled up on his bunk and turned to face the wall, closing his eyes against the image of the son he would never hold. Meanwhile, in London, Charlotte clicked off the TV. She didn't need to watch the interview. She lived it. She stood up and walked out into the garden where her father was waiting. William Kensington, the ruthless dinosaur, was currently on his hands and knees on the grass, making funny faces at baby William in his stroller. "Da-da!" the baby squealed. "He's calling for you, Dad," Charlotte laughed. William Kensington stood up, brushing grass off his bespoke suit trousers. He picked up his grandson with a tenderness that belied his reputation. "He's a Kensington, all right," William said proudly. "Look at that grip. He's going to run the world one day." "Or he'll just be a happy boy," Charlotte said, kissing the baby's forehead. "That's enough for me." "Are you happy, Lottie?" her father asked, his face serious for a moment. Charlotte looked around. She saw the estate that had been her sanctuary. She saw Alfred standing guard by the rose bushes, giving her a subtle nod. She felt the peace in her heart that she hadn't felt in years. She thought about the girl she used to be, the waitress trying to save a prince, the wife trying to please a tyrant. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her worth. "Yes, Dad," she smiled. "I'm free." As the sun set over the estate, casting long golden shadows across the lawn, Charlotte Kensington held her son close. They had taken everything from the man who tried to break them, not out of vengeance, but out of justice. And in the end, the best revenge wasn't seeing Grant in prison. It was living a life so beautiful that he simply didn't exist in it anymore. The empire of abuse had fallen, the kingdom of love had risen, and the Queen was finally on her throne. And that is the incredible story of Charlotte Kensington and Grant Caldwell. It's a powerful reminder that silence is not weakness, and patience is a weapon. Grant thought he could trample on Charlotte because she was kind, but he forgot that the most dangerous storms often start with a gentle breeze. He lost his freedom, his legacy, and his son because he couldn't see the value of the woman standing right in front of him. Justice was served, not just in the courtroom, but in life. Charlotte didn't just survive, she thrived, turning her pain into power and her trauma into a shield for others. What do you think? Did Grant deserve a harsher punishment, or is being forgotten by his own son the ultimate justice? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of karma and redemption, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another real-life drama story. Thanks for watching.